Thank you for joining me this afternoon with Julie Davis-Colan. She is the co-founder of the L Group, a business advisor, a 6-time author, a speaker, and a peak performance coach. Today, Julie is going to talk to us about how to create a winning mindset to expand your achievement, success, and cope with life's challenges. And I'm Linda Fisk, the CEO of LeadHERship Global, and I am thrilled to welcome every single person to this program today. Thank you all for being here. LeadHERship Global is the most impactful community of extraordinary women in the world, and we're so glad to welcome each and every one of you to the program today. At LeadHERship Global, we help unleash the full potential of high-performing and growth-oriented leaders in a confidential, supportive, and private community. LeadHERship Global helps members accelerate their success by defining their vision, growing their leadership, expanding their influence, and leaving a lasting legacy. If you're interested in learning more about this remarkable community of women leading across business, entertainment, and politics, then please reach out. Today, you are in for a treat. Julie is going to talk about how to create greater achievement and greater resilience by changing your mindset. With all the personal and business adjustments required right now, Julie is going to be guiding us all through the secrets of building a positive mindset and actions. And I, for one, cannot wait to learn from Julie Davis-Colan. The tools from this session will help you get the very best from yourself during this incredibly challenging time. Some of the things you're going to learn today include how your brain works by default, how to work with the nature of your brain to improve your thoughts, your words, and your actions, how to increase the positivity in your life, and how to get 6 months of benefit from 2-week commitment. This will be an interactive coaching session, and each of you will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of Julie's presentation. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Julie. Julie Davis-Colan co-founded the L Group, a leadership and organizational development consulting firm in 1999. She's an innovative business advisor and peak performance coach with experience in sales and marketing to Fortune 500 companies. Julie has authored 5 popular books, including Stick With It, Mastering the Art of Adherence, and Getting the Best of Yourself and Others. She has been coaching and encouraging positive behavior and change for over 30 years while focusing on organizational health and peak performance. Additionally, Julie is a compelling speaker and an engaging trainer. Her passion for leadership in life creates an absolutely infectious energy for all audiences. Please help me in welcoming Julie Davis-Colan.
Thank you, Linda, for that very, very warm and very kind introduction. Thank you guys all for joining us. It's a topic, as Linda mentioned, I'm very passionate about. And what I'd like to do, instead of just giving you a lot of to-dos, is I'd like to tell you a story and then take you through an understanding, as she mentioned, about how your brain works so we can work with it to get the best from ourselves. So I'm going to go back in time. I'm actually going to stroll back to 1999. And at this time, a father and his daughter were out in a garden, a rose garden. And like many of us in the pandemic, started gardening more, doing things outside. The little girl and her dad were out there, and he was kind of being a little snarly to her and just a little grumpy. And some of us can relate to that, certainly during the pandemic. And she said, she had just turned 5. And she said, "Daddy," he said, "Yes, love." She said, "Do you remember when I was 3 and 4 and I used to be very whiny?" He said, "Yes, love, I recall." She said, "Well, when I turned 5, I decided not to be whiny anymore. So I think you can decide not to be grumpy anymore." Well, that dialogue just wasn't between any two people. It was actually a dialogue between an individual by the name of Martin Seligman and his daughter in their rose garden. At the time, Martin was the president of the American Psychological Association. And what kind of occurred to him was, up until that point, psychology really studied going from a troubled state to neutral. getting to neutral. And he realized things like deciding not to be grumpy anymore were a heightened state. You wanted to get to a better state, not just you're normal when you're grumpy. So he started an area of study called positive psychology. Now, in 1999, this wasn't the first time anyone had thought of it, but what he did is really put his arms out and around as the APA, or American Psychological Association, around this group of points of knowledge. So people from health, fitness, psychiatry, org development, all sorts of people had been studying things around this periphery, but the umbrella term positive psychology and the study of it and the discipline gave everyone somewhere to put their learnings. So we started collectively, really about 10 years ago, with some new enhanced brain imaging to learn a lot about the brain. So I'd like to start by talking to you about the brain. Now, some of you may have gotten a download. If you didn't, you're going to get a completed downloaded handout after this session. But if you have one, we're going to go through that and you can fill that in. And if you don't, I'll be talking through that as well. We're going to start with thinking about what is positivity. And, some people, and I have called me this before, oh, you have such a Pollyanna approach. Well, that's not what positivity is about. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about positivity is not about always being positive. It's about increasing positivity and working with negativity. Negativity is part of life. And I'll talk a little bit more about how our brain is wired and why that even is a thing. But it's positivity, which is the key to a winning mindset, is about intentionally showing up the way you want to, not allowing your thoughts and cares to actually take over with you. So in thinking about that, what I want to do is think about your brain. And this is a little baby brain. Yours is much bigger than this. But the brain is the most complex entity on the planet. And as I mentioned, we are studying it and learning daily new things. So when I tell you something today, you might see something, it's a new blurb or a news alert tomorrow where we've learned something new. But as far as we know as of today, what we know about this has really been through, this called fMRI, and it's a very high-tech machine that allows you to look at brain activity. So your brain, this little thing, it's a little larger than ours, is made up of 100 billion neurons. And a neuron is just a cell in your brain. But each neuron is connected to 10,000 other neurons. So what we're talking about is a highly complex network in your brain that makes our thoughts, words, and feelings happen. And between each neuron, there's a gap. And this is going to be important later, and it's called a synapse. That gap has a charge and some different chemicals that flow across that connect these two neurons. What's really wonderful about all this brain research, I think the most phenomenal thing, is that some of us grew up thinking that our brain just deteriorated and we lost memory and we got worse with age. But we know that's not true. Brains are what we call neuroplastic. They're able to regenerate. So that area between two neurons can be strengthened when desired and when intentional input is put in there. And when we don't want the connection, we can actually decrease that as well and decrease a connection that's already there based on things that have happened in the past. So that neuroplasticity, or the ability of the brain to grow, is what we want to capitalize on. Now, I say that, but there is something that's inherent in this. And I mentioned this, I kind of alluded to that, and that is our brain has what we call a negativity bias. And the negativity bias served us really well in the past. When there was a saber-toothed tiger chasing me around, I wanted to protect myself. I wanted to be safe. Everyone was looking for safety. And staying alive physically was really the most important thing in the beginning of our lives as we roll back time. But now we have, as just an example, we've gone through an invisible enemy, the coronavirus. So we react in a very strong way, but we don't see anything, and we can take precautions, but that feeling of negativity is so strong. In fact, negative emotions feel much stronger than positive emotions. Negative emotions feel much stronger. There's a reason why when you turn on the news, critical alert, today this has happened. Oh, breaking news, this has happened. It's intended to get you to a heightened state of awareness, your emotions up, so that you engage in that. We are drawn to things like that unless we intentionally program ourselves differently. So when we look at what I just said, negative events feel stronger than positive events. How in the world do we show up in a different way? So we have to actually weight the number of positive events to negative to show up in a positive way. So in the chat, I would like you to give some thought. There is a ratio. It's X to 1. And there's research by Donald Clifton and Tom Rath that show how many in a work team, what the optimal ratio of positive, which I'm calling X here, to -1 event, make a wonderful working team. So I would like you to fill in the chat. What do you think X is? X to 1 makes an optimal team, and X being the number of positive events to negative. Just see 10 to 1, 5 to 1. Let's see, 10, 7, 2 to 1, 7 to 1. Good guesses. 1 to 1, 12 to 1. Okay. I think 12 is the highest we've had so far. 100 to 1, Robin Corbin. Okay. Let's see. So I think 100 is 8 to 2. Okay. So you're all guessing that it's something significant because I just said bad feels stronger than the good feels good. Well, the actual ratio is not quite as bad as most of you guessed. It's 3 to 1. In optimal work groups, you have to have 3 intentional positive interactions to 1 negative to make a balance. And you can think of that as like emotional deposits back in the Covey language, but you need 3 to 1. Now, in the chat box, once again, I want you just to guess. So that's in optimal work teams. Does anybody have a guess, if you put it in there, of what it is for an optimal marriage? How many positives to -1? So X to 1 ratio for optimal marriages. You see what you have in there. 10 to 1, 10 to 1, Todd, 6 to 1, 5. Okay. I've seen some people say 1,000, but we don't have that today. Good. 2 to 1. Okay. 3 to 1. So some of you are thinking that it might be a more compatible environment at home, and maybe you need less than more than at work to actually offset that. But actually, it's 5 to 1. 5 to 1. So optimal marriages have a 5 to 1. So when we get grumpy and we yell or we just, make a face or what have you, 5 intentional acts of positive kindness to that 1 to make that work optimally. That's a little bit of background on the brain, but now I'm going to introduce you to a couple of mental models that I think are good anchors also to help you show up more positively. The first is what we call stimulus response, back to Psychology 101. Put out the food, stimulus, the rat eats it, response. What's beautiful about us, though, is that we have a dash between that, which is choice. So when someone pushes our button, we actually have a choice of how we respond. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes we just react, but we want to learn to respond. We don't have emergency reaction teams around the world trying to help us. We have emergency response teams. So taking control of a pause between the stimulus and our response is something that humans were uniquely capable of doing. So that's a mental model to think of. The next is in the 80s, Stephen Covey was that book of 7 Habits was my thing. And one of the models that he introduced I loved was the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And yes, this is extra soft, Charmin. And that was very coveted during the pandemic. But the idea is that in the world, there are things that are concerns. And the pandemic only amplified that. It was invisible, it was big, it was impacting different groups and such. And then there was our circle of control or our circle of influence. The more that we focus on what we can influence, and I'll use the pandemic as an example, social distancing, washing hands, wearing a mask, the more we did things in our influence, this closer in size these two get to each other. When we retreat and do little, it just seems that this large roll of Charmin grows and grows and grows. So the idea of taking control of what you can to influence your environment helps that feel more in control. The third of 4 that I'm going to share is Broaden and Build. Barbara Fredrickson talks about research is quite substantial about positivity and how positivity does what we call broaden and build our options. So when I talked about a saber-toothed tiger running around and trying to grab you, there are very few options, and literally our field of vision is narrowed when we're in this heightened state of panic, in a negative emotional state. We can't think clearly. We can't think straight. We have few options. It's fight or flight. But when we are calm, when we have a positive state of well-being, the options that we consider are broader and they can build upon one another. That is helps us function tremendously at work and at play and at home. But it's the positive emotions that drive that broaden and build. Great theories, and I'm mentioning these, so if one catches your attention, you can go back and look further. The last is one that many, particularly with children, are familiar with, called the growth mindset or the fixed mindset. And Carol Dweck is known for creating what's called the growth mindset. And in essence, the growth mindset means you're not born a certain way. Julie isn't dumb. Julie isn't smart. Julie is capable of learning. And that capability is something that continues to grow over time. There's no one that has a fixed parameter. Now, in our lives, we all have things that are somewhat fixed and somewhat growth, but overall, you can choose to grow by looking at things differently. And I'm going to give you some words to help you accelerate that growth curve. So now I'm going to talk about saying. So the model that I'm using overarching is think, say, and do. So I'm going to say, what do you say? Okay, it's interesting, Julie, you talk about the brain, it can reconnect. It's interesting that there are these, synapses that work for us. There are mental models that you can kind of use as a context, but what the heck do you do? Well, the first thing I like to share is that words create worlds. Words create your worlds. And what's interesting, and piggybacking off what I just shared, is that in the English language, 62% of all of our emotional words are negative, 62%. And only 38 are positive. And if we were in person and had more time, one of the things I would ask you to do, even though I'm talking about a winning mindset and positivity, is within about a minute, ask you to write as many emotional words as possible. And without exception, what happens is, even though we're talking positivity, more negative words are written on almost everyone's list. It's because there are more negative ones to choose from. So in order to show up in a positive way, you have to actually select those words and be attuned to that lower percentage of 38% of positive words. And in doing that, we have to focus on strengths. There's a tremendous research showing that coaching based on strengths increases performance 36%, while coaching based on weaknesses decreases our output in our success by 26%, negative 26 to 36 above, a huge range. Now, that's not to say in a Pollyanna perspective that in jobs and in life that we, don't have to work on things that aren't our strengths. We do to survive, to work. But if we focus on strengths and build there, the incremental growth is so much higher. So when you look at energy in and energy out, focusing on strengths is the best way to go. I love Ken Blanchard always said, going back to the days of the 1-minute manager, catch them doing something right. In fact, he would even go so far in his classes, I believe it's at the University of San Diego, he has a leadership curriculum where starting out, he would give everyone an A. And he was expecting you to do great, and it was yours to lose. So expecting the best and focusing on the positive yields a tremendous amount of growth. What's interesting also for females out there, when I talk about words create worlds, surveys show that 65% of female CEOs from large companies didn't know they could be a CEO until someone told them they could be. Now you're thinking these people have tremendous skill, influence, capabilities, and capacity, but yet it was words that actually empowered them to tell them they could do it. So thinking about how critical and how important those words are that you say to others, 65% of female CEOs of large companies, it's pretty powerful. So the next section I want to talk about real quickly is name it to tame it. And sometimes, again, we're talking about positivity, and it's about working with negativity. So having a negative emotion isn't something we just want to push away. We actually have to express it somehow to make it go away. And I use the phrase name it to tame it, because once you name, like, I'm angry, I can start to work with that. And whether you're getting those emotions out, unexpressed emotions don't go away. They just rear their head in uglier ways. So whether you're writing a note and then you get all your seething thoughts out and then throw it away, don't ever suggest sending one of those right away. Just get those emotions out. You might journal, take a walk, think through things, but get your emotions out. Talk to someone who's a safe confidant. They don't have to solve a problem, just so you can get it off your chest. It's amazing what that does to your physical and emotional health. So expressing those emotions is critical. I would never suggest, I know I've advised many family members when they're mad, they write that seething email and put that. Never, ever, 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 ever do that. But again, something what you write down, you can have control of and throw away, is a great way to begin to work through emotions, negative ones in particular. The next section in say that I want to talk about is talking yourself up. What's interesting, and particularly interesting about females, is that most females would never talk to their best friend like they talk to themselves, because they wouldn't have any friends. They wouldn't show the doubt and questions about, attempts that they have, or their capabilities, or their contributions. They wouldn't show those doubts. They wouldn't share those with their best friend. And what I'd like to suggest is talk to yourself as your best friend. And I take this very seriously. I'm the only one that is with me 100% of the time. And some of you that know me closely know this will be the truth. And I have a particular action that I do and a phrase. And so I'm going to let you make this your own if you would like to. But it is, I say, when I do something great, I go, "Good job, Jules." And I do it all the time. So I'm going to invite you in just a second, everybody, to do this to yourself. And you don't have to say Jules, although it's fine if you do. But I want you to actually congratulate yourself and think about something for a moment that you did. Maybe it's just showing up for this today. You could have very easily blown this off. And I want you to congratulate yourself on 3 by giving yourself a high five and say, "Good job." You can put your name in there. 1, 2, 3. Good job, Jules. Now, I've seen, it seems kind of funny, and you might see me like in the grocery store. I might be in Trader Joe's and I find great oranges. I'm like, "Yeah, good job, Jules." I do it all the time. And I have work groups now around the country who will actually, they'll send me a picture or tell me, "Oh yeah, after a staff meeting, we all give ourselves a high five." The important part about that is, again, talking to yourself like you do your best friend. If you don't talk yourself up, there isn't anyone else that will. So that voice in your head that has a doubt, you have to take it captive and say, "You know what? I did a great job." Look for the right things like we were just talking about. Focus on the positive and find yourself doing some things right. Let me ask in the chat, does anyone have any other strategies for ways that you work and kind of talk yourself up or use words to create worlds that are intentionally good? We'll look on there. If anyone wants to put something in the chat, you are welcome to, because all best ideas are those that are shared. Anyone? Affirmations. Intentionally affirming yourself. And I know Robin Corbin, and she does a great job at that. She's a wonderful woman and mother, and affirms herself through life and has done a great job. So for those of you that have the handout and those of you that don't, if you just pick up a quick pen. So I'm going to actually ask you to do an activity really quickly, and then I want to ask you how you feel about that. So I want you to think of something that you have to do. And I don't care if it's, insert. Okay, you insert, you're conscious about that time. Okay, good. But I want you, Marissa, to be then talking about, I do a great job at something in that. Good. Thank you for contributing on that. But when you think of an activity you have to do, it might be laundry. It might be an Excel sheet. It might be give a presentation later today. Whatever it is, I want you to write it down on the paper. I have to X. Your X is whatever that is for you. And then I want you to now write it one way a little differently. I want you to replace the words I have to with the words get to. I get to speak to all of you today about a topic that I'm very passionately about. And in chat, as I'm chatting away here a little bit more, I want you to just share with us, how does that change things for you, or does it? Does replacing have to with get to, no matter what the activity is, change it for you? I know simple task, I used to hate laundry, and I'm getting a lot better. But I hated it. I was like, I have to do laundry. And then I intentionally employed this. I get to do laundry. And for me, what that says is if I was doing laundry, that meant at least I was very active and I had many clothes that I needed to change through. There might be other people in my household that were doing things that were able to take action and dirty clothes. I had people to love, including myself, who was able to do something that required doing laundry. And it literally changed my perspective on that. Let me see some other thoughts. Linda, can you, just talking about a friend, about what it would look like to see blessings as curses? About what the blessings and what would look as a curse. Yeah, changing that around. Things we used to have to do, you go, oh, I have to get up and go into the office today. Oh, I get to go into the office today. We have a CEO, after we had this conversation, who was thinking, I have to guide all these employees. I have a big responsibility. And when we kind of talked through it, it took a few days. And he's like, it is a huge blessing. I get to influence the lives of these employees and their families and the community and the outcome of this business. I get to do this. This is a privilege. So it's a matter of changing it from a requirement or a curse to gratitude and finding the gratitude in that. When we think about things that we do, we also take pride in kind of the way that we do things. And I know for many of us, for many years, multitasking was the thing. I can type on this and come over here and do this at the same time, and I can talk to you while I'm typing or writing a paper. What's really interesting, we're very lucky in Dallas to have the Institute for Brain Health here, which is going to be a massive study for the brain, like Framingham was to the heart. And so their intentional study of what affects the brain and how it affects the brain is fabulous, and research will just continue to flow out of there. One of the things that's so interesting, as I interviewed the CEO a couple of months ago about this, and she shared, was that multitasking is to the brain as cigarette smoking is to the heart. Now, I know we have Todd Larson on here, a fellow heart employee, so I know he knows that well. Many of you are in healthcare. Cigarette smoking is to the heart as multitasking is to the brain. That is, it creates detrimental defects that create deficits in the way our brain works. Now, that's quite remarkable information to me. And in addition, multitasking decreases your productivity 40%. Now, I have an activity. I'm just going to share it with you. We don't have time to do it collectively today, but you can have someone write out a word like, we love this webinar, and we love this webinar, and then have them do that while they're doing something else and time them when they're multitasking. You cannot do things as efficiently or correctly when you're multitasking. And that decrease of 40%, I think, is actually somewhat kind. You make mistakes and such. So, and that even includes, as I interviewed Sandra Bond Chapman, I said, does that include, like, what about music? Because I love to have music in the background. It even includes that, because what we're doing is actually, we're like rebooting from one phase of our brain to the other each time we switch topics or tasks. I'm listening to music and I'm working on a paper. I think I'm doing it all at once, but that's not how our brain works. So single focusing is the key to being the most productive, but also having the best brain health. So in order to do that, there's some ways that you can break down tasks and make a suggestion of what we call an elephant task. An elephant task is an area of focus that requires quite significant thought. And so I'm going to suggest that in the morning, if that's your fresh time, which it is for most people, or whenever that occurs throughout the day, that you block your schedule for 45 minutes for what we call elephant tasks and focus on that task completely, meaning you've silenced your cell phone, you've silenced all of your pings on your emails, you've silenced everything you can so that you can show up intentionally for that task. You'll be amazed at the accuracy, the ingenuity, and the flow that you get into with that. So focusing on your elephant tasks. Now, if you're like me, I have a million thoughts that come in even when I'm working on something else. So having a notebook to your side is a good idea. So you could just write down notes. Send birthday gift to so-and-so. Oh, call your son regarding this. Those things that come in, just put them in a parking lot, write them down again, so they're not swirling around there. An unexpressed emotion doesn't go away. It'll just start dominating. So an unexpressed thought in this way, write it down, call Cameron to do this, and then put it aside. But really stay in that focused time zone. And we suggest also there's a great brain break that I've learned from the Institute, which is 5 minutes every hour, just get up and walk around. We are actually made to move. And when we talk about more actions that we can take to help our brain and show up more positively, movement is a key one. But we are made to move. So 5 minutes, an hour, and now I know your commute might be short, but go walk outside, take a fresh breath of air, and don't try to intentionally think about anything. Just try to put thoughts aside and just walk. Again, that's a little brain break that gives your ingenuity a chance to rev back up on that. So those are a few things in the mental capacity of doing. And I'm going to share just a few more of what we call the 4 M's if you do have your sheet before we take some questions. And the first one is meaningful engagement. We were created to be connected. And it is not the same being disconnected. It's not the same in Zoom. I would love to be face to face with all of you and share that interplay and that dynamic that we could. It is not the same. And in fact, there's studies now that are coming up about Zoom exhaustion and why that is, of having to focus too much on each person's visual cues, not being able to take visual breaks. It looks rude, a litany of things on that. But we were meant to be connected. So staying connected is important. Whether if you're a manager, making sure, I know you've probably heard this before, but you're calling each employee every day. Just let them know. Some people are at home with 5 kids. Some people are sitting alone with a computer in an apartment and they're completely solo. But whatever their situation, they still face challenges. So just letting them know that people care. You would do that in the office. You wouldn't walk by someone with your blinders on. So just taking a moment to engage them. We have a concept that we call our best team, your buddies that ensure success and truth, your best team. Suggest that, even if it's virtual, that you think about a few people, 3 or 4 who might surround you in your life journey, who might do life with you, who are willing to tell you the things you don't always want to know, and understand your life goals and help you get there by encouraging success, but in truth and confirming that with you. So another concept there would be creating your best team. One of the last items under this I wanted to share was something I learned in college. I went to Florida State away from Ohio. I was very homesick. And I was very homesick until I met a girl named Emily. Emily was way worse off than I was. She was the saddest person I'd ever met. And automatically my instinct was, I have to help make her happy, So all of a sudden I took that focus and that mirror off myself and I put it on her. And by helping her and experimenting with judo and all sorts of activities at school, the physical activities that they had offered, different friend groups, different parties, different things, by taking her and making sure she was okay, all of a sudden, guess what? My homesickness went away. And that is so true in the pandemic. When you're lonely, if you focus on other people and you reach out, that is actually a cure for your soul at the same time. So it's a win-win for everyone. And that's because that's the way we're wired. So that is the area of meaningful engagement. Movement. Many of you are very well informed about this, but we were made to move. So taking breaks, moving, getting at least 60 minutes ideally of exercise 5 days a week. Do anything that you can do to move your body around. You can sit on a different exercise ball for your chair, get up, move. Say we have the wonderful Veridesk or other standing desks now. We even have the desks that my daughter has that has a bicycle on it, so she can bicycle while she's on meetings, and trying to stand still on that when someone asks her, "Are you on a bike?" Sometimes it's a little awkward, but anything you can do to keep movement throughout the day. Second one, meaningful engagement movement. Third, mindfulness. This is a big topic that includes everything from, paying attention to what you eat, to making sure you get adequate sleep. And sleep is another one of those things like multitasking that often we would say it's kind of a badge of honor, like, I only sleep 4 hours. But when you really learn about sleep, it is when washing occurs in your brain. So different enzymes and such are washed and your body is restored. So it is really critical. And I think the magic number, if there is one, is typically like 7.5 for longevity. But thinking about sleep as an essential good thing, not as, I have to go to sleep. And that, for some of us thinking, that feels like you're lazy. Meditating and praying, and then savoring. And what does that word even mean? And what I like to think of it is really intentionally showing up with all of your senses. One of the best illustrations that we had was actually through, I know Linda was part of YPO, and it was through a YPO event, that Young Presidents Organization, that I experienced this, but we did meditation and yoga with dark chocolate and wine. And I say that, and it sounds very indulgent, but the chocolate was this small. It was the teeniest piece of chocolate I've ever tasted, and literally a sip of wine, but I've never tasted it like that. So in this calm state and very intentionally putting that on your tongue, whereas we could eat a whole candy bar and not even think about it, but this little teeny taste, when all of our senses were keenly circled around it, felt like an entirely new experience. So showing up and being present. And the last M is really mastery. And one of the things I think we take for granted is just thinking that we love comfort and we love routine, which some people get in that habit, but that's not actually how our mind is wired. We are born and created for novelty. So being curious, figuring out new things, is actually life-giving. So whereas comfort may feel like the default, like, you just want to seek that, intentionally think about, what am I curious about, or what are some new activities that I can do? And I know that people have gotten creative, created banana bread, macrame, learned golf, all sorts of things. But those are great fuel for positivity and building your brain as well. So, and again, instead of thinking of those as indulgent, think of those as an area of growth for your brain. So Linda mentioned, she promised at the end that I would be giving you something that you could do for just 2 weeks and get 6 weeks of benefit from. And if by chance you didn't get the handout beforehand, you will get it in follow up with the recording, so you can do this at that point. But what I'd like you to do is, it's not just simply Oprah's gratitude list, but it does go with gratitude, is I want you to think of 3 good things that you did today and each day, or 3 good things that happen. But in addition to that, I want you to think about, what role did you have in that? Now that might think, I didn't have any role. Like, what happened today? You might have learned something new. Well, that wasn't from me. I just showed up. You showed up. That's what role you had in it. I might be excited that my son comes home from New York City, and I'm so excited about that. Well, what was my role? Well, maybe I found the flight. So thinking about what your role is in 3 activities per day that are good things that happen to you. And I want you to do that daily, and I've given you a chart for that in this follow-up. And I want you to just do it for 2 weeks. The beautiful thing about this is the positive feelings of gratitude that emerge from this have, in science and studies, have shown to last for 6 months for just an investment of two weeks. So I challenge you to do that, not just your standard, 3 things, but think about how you contributed to those 3 things as we go. Now, Linda, as I'm winding down, we're going to go ahead and, if you have questions, go ahead and take those from the audience. I appreciate you guys being here. Linda mentioned our firm is called the L Group. We are leadership advisors dedicated to healthy growth. And we have 2 newsletters that come out per week. one on leadership, and one on inspiration and encouragement. So if that's something that you would like from us, you can text the word leadership to a very long number now. It used to be short, but it's 833-250-7377. The word leadership to 833-250-7377. I've greatly appreciated having the time with you guys today.
Well, I will tell you that, Julie, you've given us so many tips today, and I feel like this has been such a lovely, rich, deep sort of reminder of what we can do to change our mindset. So thank you. But if you had to prioritize just one mental tip for everyone to gain a more positive sort of winning mindset, Julie, what would you recommend? What would that one tip be?
Yeah, I would say change your words, change your world. And those are words that you say to yourself and to others. And they're contagious. When other people hear how you speak, they will speak differently. But I would say change your words, change your world. I would focus there first, very clearly.
Today's audience is largely made out of LeadHERship Global members, and they have been thrilled with the content that you've covered today, Julie, and that's all noted in the chat. So first and foremost, let me thank you. Thank you, Julie, for sharing your expertise, sharing your knowledge, and being such wise counsel to all of us navigating an unprecedented time with COVID-19, working remotely and trying to manage a lot in our lives as women and as leaders. So first off, thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. And for everyone that has joined us that is not yet part of the LeadHERship Global community, allow me to warmly invite you to take a look at the most impactful community of extraordinary women in the world. We would be welcome to invite you to our incredibly supportive, private, and confidential community. Please reach out to me if you'd like to learn more about LeadHERship Global. As you noted in Julie's talk, one of the most powerful and important ways of changing your mindset and really embracing positivity is to be surrounded by people who will lift you up, who will support you, who will tell you the truth in love. And that is what LeadHERship Global is all about. We unleash the full potential of high-performing and growth-oriented leaders in a confidential, supportive, and private community. So if you'd like to learn more, we would welcome you to our community. And I personally would love to get to know each and every one of you, so please reach out if you're interested. In the meantime, Julie has some amazing resources for all of you. You should have, prior to today's event, received a worksheet from me, as well as an invitation to register so that you can receive today's recording. Know that within the next day, you will receive a recording of today's program so that you can review it at your leisure. You can share it with coworkers, friends, and colleagues. And I will make sure that all of you also receive the worksheet one more time so that if you missed it in the first email, you'll be able to have it in the second email as a wrap up for today's program. And as I noted, Julie also has a couple upcoming coaching workshops that you are welcome to attend, both of them. There are incredibly dynamic workshops about leadership and about embracing the positivity mindset. And all of you, I think, have noted the power of Julie's coaching in the chat. So, please take a look at that as well. Julie, again, thank you so much. I'm very, very grateful for your time.